Tensura X Villainess by Rimu-chi. Rimuru's POV. Well, that was interesting. I didn't even notice what happened. Honestly, I'm still a bit confused. Master, there is nothing to be confused about. Your skin is absolutely unscratchable. Is that so? Good work, Seal. It's my duty as your first wife. Sure, sure. Anyway, let's focus on this audience. The king turned his attention to Yumachan, his gaze curious. I've heard from your magic instructor that you possess dark magic, Miss Yumilia. If you don't mind, could you show us? Yumachan nodded confidently, a small smile playing on her lips. Gladly, Your Majesty. She raised her hand gracefully, her voice steady and commanding. Shadow lengths. In an instant, the floor around her darkened, as though the very light was being swallowed up. Red and black hues swirled together, and sharp spikes erupted from the ground, pulsating with an ominous aura. The sheer intensity of the magic sent chills down the spine of everyone in the room. The nobles' reactions were immediate and visceral. Dark magic. That's definitely dark magic. Look at the aura. It's overwhelming. She has black hair, unmatched strength, and now she's wielding that. Is she truly human? She's more than human, she's like a demon queen come to life. This young lady, she's terrifying and AWE inspiring all at once. No wonder the king personally apologized to her earlier. She isn't someone to be trifled with. She has every right to be called the demon queen with power like that. Some nobles visibly shrank back in fear, while others gazed at her in admiration and newfound respect. The king's expression shifted from surprise to delight as he clapped his hands. Oh, it's dark magic indeed. Impressive. Truly impressive, Miss Yumilia. Your control and power are extraordinary. The queen giggled softly, her eyes alight with amusement. Yes, extraordinary indeed. I've never seen dark magic wielded so elegantly. I smiled, stepping forward slightly. Yumachan's dark magic is pure and beautiful, I said, my voice clear and unwavering. It's more refined than light magic and any other elemental magic I've ever seen. The king raised his eyebrows, his gaze shifting to me with renewed respect. To call dark magic pure and beautiful, that's an unexpected perspective, Sir Rimuru. But seeing it wielded by Miss Yumilia, I must admit I agree with you. The queen's smile deepened as her gaze flicked toward me. Sir Rimuru, you always know how to surprise us with your words. To think you'd hold such admiration for dark magic, and for its wielder. Her tone held a teasing edge, and I could tell she was thoroughly enjoying herself. Third person POV. As she spoke, both the king and queen seemed to notice Serafina's expression. She was staring at Rimuru, her brows slightly furrowed and her lips pressed into a thin line. Her usual calm demeanor was tinged with something else, jealousy. The queen leaned toward the king, whispering just loud enough for King to hear. It seems that Maid Serafina is not pleased. Perhaps Sir Rimuru's heart is torn between Miss Yumilia and his dear Maid Serafina. The king chuckled softly, his eyes glinting with amusement. Indeed, it would appear so. What a fortunate man he must be to hold the affection of two remarkable young women. The nobles, meanwhile, were in complete uproar. He called dark magic beautiful. Who even thinks like that? It's not just the magic. Did you see how he praised her? He must care for her deeply. First, his unshakable strength, and now this. Rimuru Tempest is more than just powerful, he's captivating. And did you see Maid's face? She was clearly jealous. Does Rimuru Tempest have feelings for both of them? That would explain so much. He's like a protagonist from a romance story, surrounded by powerful women and admired by all. One lady said. I don't blame them. With power, charisma, and insight like his, how could anyone resist him? Another said. Back to Rimuru's POV. The energy in the room was electric, a mixture of fear, admiration, and intrigue. And as I glanced at Yumachan, I couldn't help but think she handled herself beautifully. Yumachan, you really know how to steal the show, I thought with a smirk. The queen giggled lightly, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Your instructor mentioned you had a surprise for us, Sir Rimuru. Something about the elements you can use. The king leaned forward, his interest clearly piqued. Yes, though she didn't share the specifics. Perhaps it's light magic. Would you mind showing us? I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. So, our instructor decided to keep it a secret, huh? That's quite the setup. Suddenly, Ciel's voice rang in my mind. Master, it seems your magic instructor wants to leave the king and queen in awe. Perhaps as a way to further demonstrate your uniqueness. Seems like it, I replied mentally. Taking a step back, I spread my arms slightly. Well then, your majesties, if you don't mind, I'll reveal it now. With a snap of my fingers, 6 energy spheres manifested around me. Above my head floated spheres of fire, water, earth, and wind, glowing brilliantly with their respective elemental colors. Beside me, a radiant golden orb of light hovered, shimmering with an almost divine purity. Slowly, I raised my hand, summoning a sphere of dark energy that pulsed ominously with power. These, I said calmly, are my elements. The king's jaw dropped, his expression one of utter disbelief. 6 elements: fire, water, earth, wind, light, and even dark magic. That's impossible. The queen placed a hand over her mouth, her white eyes darting between the energy spheres. Never in recorded history has anyone possessed all 6 elements. 2 is rare enough, and 4 is considered a miracle. But this is beyond comprehension. The king leaned back in his chair, his voice filled with awe. To wield all 6 elements, Rimuru Tempest, you are truly a being beyond mortal understanding. The room erupted into chaos as the gathered nobles processed what they had just witnessed. 6 elements. That's absurd. No human, no creature, no one in history has ever wielded all 6. Unmatched strength, an unshakable level of confidence, and now this. He's like a figure straight out of legend. Black hair, a level of 100, and now the mastery of every elemental force. This isn't just power, it's authority. The authority of a demon lord. If there's anyone deserving of that title, it's him. Even the ancient texts spoke of a ruler who could command all 6 elements. Could it be? Rimuru Tempest is the one. If there truly were another demon lord in existence, they would pale in comparison to him. No one else has the right to bear the title. You mean, he should be called Demon Lord? I smiled lightly as I watched the room descend into whispers and gasps. The power on display wasn't just a spectacle, it was a statement. The king regained his composure, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied me. Sir Rimuru, with abilities like these, you truly stand apart from anyone else in the world. Your strength alone is unparalleled, but this mastery, it's no wonder your reputation precedes you. The queen giggled again, her tone laced with amusement. Indeed, it seems our court has been graced by someone extraordinary. You're not just powerful, Sir Rimuru, you're an enigma. Even the king acknowledges his unparalleled strength. And the queen, did you hear her? She's as impressed as the rest of us. This changes everything. Rimuru Tempest isn't just a noble, he's a force of nature. His presence alone could rewrite history. If there's anyone worthy of being called a demon lord, it's him. Frankly, if another demon lord exists, they should relinquish the title. Rimuru Tempest is in a league of his own. I sighed internally as the murmurs and whispers continued. This was exactly the kind of reaction I had anticipated, but it didn't make it any less tiring. Master, you've certainly left an impression. I always do, don't I? Of course. That's why I love you. Smirking slightly, I turned back to the king and queen, preparing myself for whatever came next. Third person Pav. The king turned to the elderly noble sitting at his side and nodded. Sir Albrecht, if you would, explain the nature of the elements for the court. The old noble stood slowly, leaning on his cane for support. His voice carried the weight of decades of knowledge as he began. Your Majesty, lords, and ladies, the elements are the very essence of magic itself. They stem directly from the forces of nature. There are 6 in total: fire, water, wind, and earth, the primary and most common elements. And then there are the rarest: light and dark. Light magic has long been associated with divinity, thought to be a gift from the heavens. Dark magic, on the other hand, has been unfairly vilified, seen as an evil force connected to malice. However, this is a misconception. The room grew quiet, the nobles hanging on his every word. Light and dark magic are simply 2 sides of the same coin, no different from fire or water. Their nature is neither good nor evil. The morality lies solely in the user. I recall, during my younger years in the capital, meeting a mage with an affinity for dark magic. He was one of the kindest souls I ever knew, despite wielding what many feared. The king, intrigued, leaned forward in his throne. So you're saying dark magic is not inherently evil? Precisely, Your Majesty, Albrecht affirmed. It is a natural element like any other. The stigma surrounding it is born of fear, not fact. The king straightened and turned to address the court. Then let it be known. No one in this kingdom shall be judged as evil simply for possessing an affinity for dark magic. Such prejudice has no place here. The queen, who had been quietly observing, added, so, all those rumors associating dark magic exclusively with evil are entirely baseless. Indeed, Your Grace, Albrecht replied. The nobles erupted into a cacophony of whispers and murmurs. This is unacceptable. Dark magic has always been associated with evil. The king is challenging centuries of tradition. How can he do this? Even if the queen herself supports this notion, it's too much to take in. Dark magic can't simply be accepted like that. Others, more progressive in their thinking, expressed curiosity rather than outright rejection. Perhaps the king has a point. If light magic can be used for evil, why can't dark magic be used for good? But what does this mean for our laws? For the teachings of the church? This could destabilize everything. The nobles' voices grew louder, their complaints escalating as some began to direct their grievances toward the king himself. Before the king could respond, Rimuru stepped forward, his voice cutting through the din like a blade. That's enough. His shout reverberated through the chamber, and a sudden, oppressive aura filled the air. Behind him, massive, translucent dragon-like wings of pure energy unfurled, stretching across the throne room. The atmosphere darkened, an ominous presence engulfing the space. The nobles fell silent, their complaints dying in their throats. Some stumbled back in fear, while others froze in place, unable to look away from the terrifying yet majestic sight. Even Yumilia, who was used to Rimuru's power, felt a shiver run down her spine. Rimuru smiled. A cold, unsettling smile that sent a collective chill through the room. If you believe that dark magic is inherently evil and light magic is divine, then you are utterly mistaken, Rimuru said, his tone sharp and unwavering. With a snap of his fingers, the wings vanished, and the throne chamber returned to its normal state. The oppressive aura dissipated as if it had never existed. Yumilia, sensing the tension, stepped forward hesitantly. Rimuru-san, it's all right. There will always be people who resist change. It's just how the world is. Rimuru, however, shook his head. That's not it, Yumichi. If someone refuses to change, then it falls on others to make them see reason. Otherwise, progress will never be achieved. The king, though startled by Rimuru's sudden display of power, was quick to recover. He regarded Rimuru with a mixture of awe and respect. Sir Rimuru, your conviction is clear, and your strength is undeniable. I trust your judgment in this matter. The queen, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. Her hands, clasped tightly together, trembled slightly, though she maintained her composure. Such a presence, it was as though the room itself bowed to you, she said softly, her voice laced with astonishment. The nobles, who had been so vocal moments earlier, now sat in stunned silence. Those wings, were they real? How could anyone summon such a presence? That wasn't magic. It was something far beyond it. He silenced the entire chamber with a single word. If that isn't authority, I don't know what is. The throne room was filled with an expectant silence as Rimuru stepped forward once more. He looked at the nobles, his expression calm yet commanding. Listen up, Rimuru began, his voice firm and steady. If anyone here wants to believe in elements that come directly from gods, let me show you one. He raised one hand, and instantly, a radiant orb of pure white energy materialized above his palm. The energy was blindingly bright yet soothing, its purity far surpassing anything the court had ever seen. It exuded an aura so divine it felt as if it came directly from the heavens themselves. This, Rimuru said, his voice reverberating through the chamber, is holy magic, a divine element, pure and untouched. You could say this is magic directly from the gods. The room erupted in a mix of awe and disbelief. The king leaned forward in his seat, his eyes wide with shock. Holy magic. I thought it was light elements, he murmured, his voice trembling. The queen clutched the arms of her chair, her composure faltering as she whispered. Such purity, I've never seen anything like it. The nobles were in complete disarray. This surpasses light magic by far. It's divine in every sense. Does this mean Rimuru is chosen by the gods themselves? Impossible. How can a mortal possess such an element? Among them, Serafina's expression darkened. She seemed uncharacteristically tense, her hands gripping the edge of her dress as she watched Rimuru intently. But Rimuru wasn't finished. With a flick of his wrist, the pure white energy disappeared. In its place, a swirling orb of dark, ominous energy formed, radiating malice and power. It was as if the room itself recoiled from its presence. And this, Rimuru continued, holding up the dark orb for all to see, as demonic magic. A power far darker than simple dark magic. You could say this comes directly from demons themselves. The air grew heavier, almost suffocating, as the nobles recoiled in fear. With both elements now displayed, Rimuru posed his question, his tone sharp and cutting. Now tell me, do you still believe light and dark magic are from gods and evil? Or will you finally understand that magic itself is neutral, and it is the wielder who determines its nature? Before anyone could respond, Serafina hurried forward. Her face was pale, and her movements were frantic as she reached Rimuru and slapped her hand over his mouth. Master, she hissed, her voice barely containing her panic. You can't just say that in public. Those elements are exclusive to the Tempest family and my Nova clan. Rimuru blinked, clearly startled by her sudden outburst. He lowered his hand, and the dark orb dissipated. Turning back to the king and queen, both of whom were visibly shaken, Rimuru gave a sheepish smile. Oops, looks like I crossed a line there, he admitted, scratching the back of his head awkwardly. Yumilia sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. I'm happy to be learning something new, but Rimuru-san, you're impossible. Serafina nodded in agreement. Honestly, you have no sense of restraint sometimes. Rimuru chuckled softly. Yumichan. Serafina. I am sorry. My bad. The king's face remained pale as he tried to compose himself. Two new elements, holy and demonic. Both of them beyond anything recorded in our history. And to hear they belong solely to the Tempest family and Nova clan, he trailed off, clearly overwhelmed. Rimuru Tempest, you've shattered everything we thought we knew about magic. The queen's reaction was more subdued, but her trembling hands gave away her shock. To think such power is exclusive to two families. It explains much, and yet it's terrifying. If this is the magic your bloodline wields, Rimuru, then the stories of demon lords pale in comparison to you. The nobles erupted into whispers, their voices a cacophony of fear and disbelief. Holy and demonic magic. This can't be real. Is Rimuru Tempest some kind of god? Or a demon himself? If those elements are exclusive to the Tempest family and Nova clan, does that mean no one else can ever hope to match them? First 6 elements, now this. He doesn't just have the authority to be called a demon lord, he's far beyond that. Some nobles sat frozen, unable to comprehend the revelation, while others looked at Rimuru with newfound fear and reverence. In that moment, it became clear to all present. Rimuru Tempest wasn't just a foreigner or a powerful mage. He was a force unlike anything the world had ever seen, and his mere existence would reshape their understanding of power forever. As the king's hearty laughter echoed through the throne room, the atmosphere shifted again. The nobles, already unsettled by Rimuru's incredible revelations, now turned their attention to the conversation between the royal family and their unexpected guests. The king addressed Rimuru with admiration in his voice. You're an impressive individual, Sir Rimuru. The last remaining member of the Tempest family, and yet the most extraordinary of them all. Black hair, unmatched strength, mastery over all 6 elements, and even control over holy and demonic magic. I must say, you are far beyond impressive. He then turned to Yumilia with a warm smile. And you, Miss Yumilia, have found yourself a companion of unparalleled power. Perhaps even someone who is destined to be more than just a friend. The queen giggled softly at the king's playful suggestion, causing Yumilia's face to flush a deep crimson. She quickly lowered her gaze, hiding her embarrassment. We're not like that, Your Majesty. She stammered, her voice flustered. In the background, Serafina's expression soured. Clenching her fists, she muttered under her breath, her tone filled with quiet possessiveness, Rimuru-sama will be mine first before anyone else. Although her words were barely audible, her envious aura was palpable to anyone paying attention. The queen's gaze shifted between the two guests, her smile widening. Sir Rimuru, Miss Yumilia, I would love to speak with both of you after this meeting. Would that be acceptable? Yumilia quickly nodded, eager to show her respect. I would gladly accept that, Your Majesty, she said with a polite bow. The queen then turned to Rimuru, her smile soft yet calculating. And what about you, Sir Rimuru? Rimuru responded with a confident grin. Absolutely, Your Majesty. I'd be honored. The room erupted into a flurry of whispers as the nobles began speculating about the queen's intentions. She must be planning something. A meeting with both of them. It's too strategic to be mere courtesy. Of course. Binding Rimuru Tempest and Yumilia Dolkness to the royal family would elevate the kingdom's power beyond imagination. His power alone could rival entire armies, and hers isn't far behind. If they become tied to the royal family, no one would dare oppose them. Some nobles glanced at Rimuru with calculating expressions, already considering how to manipulate the situation to their advantage. Among them, a nobleman with a sharp, cunning gaze leaned toward one of his aides and whispered, My daughter attends the same prestigious academy as Rimuru Tempest and Yumilia Dolkness. Send her a message immediately. She is to get close to Rimuru, no matter what. If she can secure his favor, our family will rise to untold heights. The aide nodded and quickly slipped out of the chamber to carry out the order. Another noblewoman overheard the plan and decided to mirror the strategy. She whispered to her own confidant, Ensure my son starts paying attention to Yumilia Dolkness. If we can gain her loyalty or even her affection, we'll hold sway over one of the most powerful alliances in the kingdom. The whispers and quiet scheming spread like wildfire among the nobles. Some plotted to align their families with Rimuru and Yumilia, while others considered ways to undermine the royal family's growing influence. The king and queen exchanged subtle glances, fully aware of the murmurs around them. The queen's smile deepened, a mixture of satisfaction and intrigue. Meanwhile, Rimuru stood at ease, completely unbothered by the nobles' reactions. In his mind, he heard Ciel's voice once more. Master, you've created quite the storm. I didn't even do anything. They're the ones scheming like it's a festival, Rimuru replied internally. That's precisely why it's amusing, Master. Good job. Wait, are you actually complimenting me? Yes, Master is the best. Ciel's telepathic tone was dry but affectionate, and Rimuru couldn't help but chuckle softly, confusing those watching him. The king raised his hand, silencing the whispers and murmurs that filled the grand throne room. The nobles, already on edge from Rimuru's earlier display, immediately quieted. The king's deep, authoritative voice echoed through the hall. Sir Rimuru Tempest and Miss Yumilia Dolkness, as a token of my gratitude and admiration for your remarkable strength and abilities, I grant you the opportunity to ask for anything you desire. It matters not what it may be it the kingdom's treasures, your own domain, noble titles, or even a place in the royal family itself. Speak your wishes, and I shall consider them. The declaration sent waves of shock through the gathered nobles. They exchanged uneasy glances, whispering in hushed voices. The king is offering them anything. This is unprecedented. Could he be planning to tie them to the royal family to secure their power? If Rimuru Tempest and Yumilia Dolkness accept noble titles or domains, their influence will overshadow ours even more it's already are. The tension in the room was palpable, with envy and fear spreading among the aristocracy. Yumilia stepped forward, her voice calm and steady as she bowed gracefully. Your Majesty, I do not desire wealth, titles, or power. I only wish to live in peace and enjoy my life as I see fit. The queen smiled warmly, her voice soft yet calculated. Such a simple and pure wish, Miss Yumilia. You are indeed a remarkable young woman. Yumilia blushed slightly and replied politely, Thank you, my lady. The queen's words caused another ripple among the nobles. As the queen trying to win Yumilia over. One noble murmured. Of course she is. Securing Yumilia's loyalty would solidify the royal family's power even further. The suspicion and unease grew as they observed the queen's subtle maneuvering. The king turned to Rimuru, his eyes filled with curiosity. And you, Sir Rimuru? What is it that you desire? Rimuru paused thoughtfully, his expression unreadable. Within his mind, Ciel's voice chimed in. Master, what are you planning to ask for? I'm thinking of securing my Demon Lord title. How about that? If that is your wish, I have no objections. Rimuru smirked slightly. Thanks, Ciel. Love you. Before Ciel could respond with something cheeky, Rimuru quickly cut off the telepathic connection. Turning to the king, Rimuru spoke confidently. Actually, I have two requests. The queen giggled, her playful tone adding to the intrigue. Oh, and what might those requests be, Sir Rimuru? Rimuru smiled, his voice steady and sure. First, I wish to bear the title of Demon Lord, if that is possible. Gasps filled the room, and the tension escalated as every noble's gaze locked on Rimuru. The king's brows lifted in surprise, but his expression quickly turned thoughtful. A bold request, he said, his voice laced with curiosity. Why would you desire the title of Demon Lord, Sir Rimuru? It is a title most seek to avoid. Rimuru's smile deepened, his eyes gleaming with determination. Because I desire to be the Demon Lord of this world. I will protect it in my way, and for that, I need the authority such a title brings. The nobles were stunned. Who wants to be a Demon Lord? One noble hissed. This man is insane. But with his power, he could easily claim the title and enforce it. The title alone will give him dominion over anyone who fears it. The balance of power will shift dramatically. The atmosphere grew thick with fear and resentment, though no one dared speak out loud. The king chuckled heartily. Very well, Sir Rimuru. Your wish to bear the title of Demon Lord is granted. The nobles erupted in murmurs again, but the king raised his hand, silencing them once more. The queen leaned forward, her voice teasing. And what of your second request, Sir Rimuru? What could be as bold as your first? Rimuru's grin turned sly. I want the authority to claim anyone I desire for myself. Gasps filled the room once again. The queen's laughter was light and teasing. What a daring request. With such authority, you could claim anyone you desire, even Miss Yumilia, or perhaps even myself. Yumilia's face turned bright red, and she quickly covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed by embarrassment. The queen continued, her tone playful. But tell me, Sir Rimuru, what is the reason behind such a wish? Rimuru glanced at the queen and then at the king. There is a woman with blue hair I wish to claim for myself. Serafina froze in shock, her eyes wide as she stared at Rimuru. The queen smirked, clearly entertained. Such boldness. I approve. This will make things far more interesting. She turned to the king. What do you think, my king? Shall we grant him his second wish? The king nodded, a grin spreading across his face. Indeed, Sir Rimuru, your second wish is also granted. Rimuru bowed slightly. Thank you, Your Majesty. The nobles were in a frenzy of disbelief and outrage. Holy magic, demonic magic, all 6 elements, and now this. With this authority, he can claim anyone, even the queen. How can we stop him? He's already claimed the Demon Lord title. What's stopping him from taking over entirely? Some nobles began whispering orders to their aides, plotting ways to protect their interests or secure alliances with Rimuru. The atmosphere was electric with tension, admiration, and fear as the future of the kingdom, and the world, shifted irrevocably in Rimuru's favor. Rimuru's pav. I was currently sitting in one of the castle's ornate meeting rooms. With me were Yumichan and Serafina. For some reason, Serafina was blushing furiously, while Yumichan looked mad-glaring at everything except me. I tilted my head in confusion. I didn't recall saying or doing anything that would trigger this kind of reaction. Seal. I called out to her in my mind. Why is Yumichan looking mad and Serafina blushing? Seal sighed heavily, her voice tinged with exasperation. Master, you truly have no idea, do you? If I did, I wouldn't be asking you, right? Fair point, Master. So, what's going on? First of all, Serafina is blushing because, during the audience with the king, you mentioned wanting to claim a blue-haired woman for yourself. She thinks you were talking about her. I blinked in surprise. Well, I can't argue with that. She is practically an exact copy of you. Smug face. Is that so, Master? Yes. Now what about Yumichan? She's jealous. Jealous. Jealous of what? Sigh. You truly haven't realized it yet, have you, Master? Realized what? Never mind. Just focus on the conversation with the queen. I felt a bead of sweat form as I tried to figure out what Seal was hinting at, but before I could press further, she cut the connection. Yaa. Let's just focus on the queen, I muttered under my breath. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to become a whole lot more complicated. Yumillias, pav. I was sitting in the meeting room with Rimurusan and Serafina, waiting for the queen to arrive. And I was mad. The reason? I wasn't entirely sure. But I knew this feeling had started during the audience with the king. Rimu-san had asked for authority to claim anyone he desired, and the king granted it. Then, he mentioned wanting to claim a woman with blue hair. The only blue-haired woman I knew was Serafina, his maid. Was that why I was angry? I couldn't say for certain, but for a moment, it felt like my entire world had turned black. I sighed and glanced at Serafina, who was blushing furiously. Rimu-san, on the other hand, sat there casually, as though nothing significant had happened. Honestly, nothing had happened yet, but still. He looked at me suddenly, and I quickly turned my gaze away. Then he asked, Yumichan, is there any problem? No, absolutely not, I replied curtly. As that's so? He asked, tilting his head. Do you have any idea what the queen wants to talk to us about? I have no clue, I said, trying to sound indifferent. But I'm thinking it's probably something political. Who knows? Did I do something to make you mad, Yumichan? Because I feel like I've done something wrong here, Rimu-san said, looking genuinely puzzled. I sighed heavily. No, you didn't do anything. But then, under my breath, I muttered, but you did say something. Did you say something, Yumichan? He asked again, leaning slightly forward. No, I didn't say anything, I lied quickly. If you say so, he said, unconvinced. Then he turned to Serafina and asked, Hey, Serafina, stop blushing. What if the queen gets the wrong idea when she sees you like this? Serafina puffed out her cheeks and said, I can't help it, Rimuru-sama. HMPH. What did I even do, exactly? I'm so lost here, Rimuru-san muttered, rubbing the back of his head. You can think about that later, Serafina replied, crossing her arms. For now, please focus on the matter at hand. Rimuru-san sighed in defeat. Fine, fine. As we sat there waiting for the queen, I couldn't help but feel a pang of frustration every time I looked at Serafina. She seemed so comfortable around Rimuru-san, and he didn't seem to mind. Why did it bother me so much? I didn't understand this strange feeling, but I knew it wasn't going away anytime soon. Third person Pav, Rimuru, Yumilia, and Serafina had been waiting for about 10 minutes when the door finally opened. The queen entered the room, accompanied by a young girl. The girl had long white hair and striking yellow eyes that bore a faint resemblance to Rimuru's and Serafina's glowing golden eyes, though hers lacked their luminescent quality. She had a reserved demeanor, and it was evident that she was still in her teenage years. This was Princess Ilaria, the youngest child of the royal family. Yumilia immediately stood up in respect, but Rimuru remained seated, his casual nature showing. As for Serafina, she didn't even acknowledge the queen or the princess at all, her attitude as indifferent as ever. The queen and Princess Ilaria took their seats. You don't have to be so formal, the queen said with a warm smile. This isn't an official meeting. Yumilia and Rimuru nodded, relaxing slightly. If I may, Yumilia said, her curiosity evident, is she your daughter, my lady? The queen nodded proudly. Yes, she is. Turning to her daughter, she added, why don't you introduce yourself, my dear? Princess Ilaria hesitated for a moment, then stood up, her shyness evident. I am Ilaria, the third child of the royal family, she said softly. I'm 16 years old. It's a pleasure to meet you, Sir Rimuru and Lady Yumilia. Rimuru gave her an encouraging nod. That's an impressive introduction, I must say. Yumilia smiled and agreed. Princess Ilaria returned to her seat, her expression relaxing a little. Though still shy, she seemed more comfortable now. The queen broke the silence. Thank you for coming here to indulge my selfish request. It's not a problem, my lady, Rimuru and Yumilia replied simultaneously. The queen chuckled softly. I wanted to ask if either of you is familiar with the factions that operate within this kingdom. Rimuru and Yumilia exchanged puzzled looks. Serafina, however, wore a knowing smile. Actually, no, Rimuru admitted. I'm not familiar with them either, Yumilia added. The queen smiled warmly. If you'd like, I can explain. Both Rimuru and Yumilia nodded eagerly, prompting the queen to begin. The queen smiled gently as she began her explanation. In this kingdom, there are two major factions that dominate the political landscape, the king's faction and the anti-king faction. She leaned forward slightly, her tone calm yet serious. The king's faction is composed of nobles who are loyal to the kingdom and to his majesty. They prioritize the welfare of the nation, working to maintain peace and prosperity. These individuals are pillars of the kingdom's stability. Rimuru and Yumilia nodded, following her words intently. The anti-king faction, on the other hand, the queen continued, her expression darkening slightly, is made up of nobles who oppose the king's rule. They seek to amass power and wealth for themselves, often at the expense of the kingdom's well-being. Their ultimate goal is to weaken the king's authority and gain control over the government. Yumilia tensed visibly at the mention of the anti-king faction, her hands clenching slightly in her lap. The queen noticed this and offered a sympathetic look before addressing the elephant in the room. Miss Yumilia, your family, the Dolkness family, is a prominent member of the anti-king faction. Yumilia's eyes widened, and she quickly looked down. I don't agree with their ideals, my lady, she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. I may be from that family, but I don't share their ambitions or their disregard for the kingdom's well-being. The queen nodded understandingly. I've heard as much, Miss Yumilia. Your reputation precedes you, and I believe in your sincerity. She then turned her attention to Rimuru. As for you, Sir Rimuru, your Tempest family is unique. You are neither part of the king's faction nor the anti-king faction. In fact, you are a neutral force, and that makes you a significant figure in this kingdom's political sphere. Rimuru raised an eyebrow. Neutral. That's an interesting way to describe it. I've just been minding my own business. The queen chuckled. Perhaps, but your mere presence disrupts the balance between these two factions. The king's faction sees you as a potential ally, someone who could bolster the kingdom's strength. The anti-king faction, however, likely views you as a threat to their ambitions. Yumilia looked at Rimuru with concern. That sounds like a lot of pressure. Rimuru shrugged. It's not like I asked for it, but I guess it's unavoidable. The queen continued. Understanding these factions is crucial, especially for individuals like yourselves, who are destined to shape the future of this kingdom. How you navigate these political waters will determine the course of not just your lives but the fate of the entire nation. Serafina, who had been silent until now, smirked. Master Rimuru doesn't need to navigate anything. If anyone tries to involve him in their petty schemes, they'll regret it. The queen smiled. I don't doubt Sir Rimuru's strength, but sometimes, battles are fought with words and influence rather than swords and magic. Rimuru sighed. Great. Politics. Just what I needed. The queen chuckled softly, her voice tinged with amusement. Consider it a challenge, Sir Rimuru. You've already proven yourself capable in so many ways. I'm confident you'll rise to this occasion as well. Princess Ilaria, who had been quietly listening, hesitantly spoke up. I believe in you too, Sir Rimuru. Her shy yet sincere words brought a rare, genuine smile to Rimuru's face. Thank you, Princess. I'll do my best. The atmosphere in the room softened as the queen clasped her hands together. That's enough of politics for now. Let's talk about something I truly want to discuss, she said with a warm, playful smile. Princess Ilaria, sitting beside her mother, glanced at the table and interjected shyly but firmly, Mother, tell them to enjoy those snacks. They're not for show, you know. Her voice was soft, but there was an undeniable note of earnestness in it. The queen chuckled softly, amusement dancing in her golden eyes. You're absolutely right, dear. She turned her attention to Rimuru and Yumilia, gesturing toward the assortment of delicacies on the table. As my daughter so wisely points out, please, enjoy yourselves. Don't let our conversation distract you from these treats. Yumilia, ever polite and composed, nodded graciously. She reached for a small pastry, holding it delicately between her fingers before taking a careful bite. Thank you, my lady, she said with a respectful bow of her head. Rimuru, however, looked at the table with a resigned expression and sighed. Well, I suppose I can't ignore royal hospitality, he said in an exaggerated tone, grabbing 2 snacks. Without hesitation, he popped one into his mouth, chewing thoughtfully before extending the second one toward Serafina. He held it mere inches from her lips, his hand steady and his expression unreadable. Serafina blinked in surprise, her cheeks tinged with a soft pink. Master, what are you doing? She asked, her voice uncharacteristically uncertain. Rimuru's golden eyes gleamed with mischief as he leaned closer. Feeding you. Of course, he replied, his voice low and smooth, carrying a teasing warmth that made her heart skip a beat. You've been standing there quietly, looking like you're waiting for me to take care of you. So, here, open up. A quiet hush fell over the room, broken only by the soft rustling of fabric as Serafina hesitated for a moment before leaning forward. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes locked onto Rimuru's, as if gauging his sincerity. Finally, she took a delicate bite of the snack, her lips brushing against his fingers ever so lightly. Delicious, she murmured, her voice soft yet filled with pride. As expected, Master Rimuru always knows how to treat me. The moment was intimate, almost electric. Princess Ilaria gasped audibly, her face flushing a deep crimson as she clasped her hands together. I've only read about moments like this in romantic books, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced away quickly, hiding her face behind her hands, though she couldn't resist peeking through her fingers. Yumilia, who had been sipping her tea, froze mid-action. Her grip tightened slightly on the cup, her expression a mix of confusion and irritation. Why am I feeling so annoyed? She thought, her gaze flickering between Rimuru and Serafina. She couldn't help but blurt out, Rimuru-san, you seem very close to Serafina. Rimuru turned to her with a raised eyebrow, his lips curling into a faint smile. Close. That's one way to put it, he said, his tone both teasing and nonchalant. She is my maid, after all. The queen, watching the entire scene with great amusement, giggled softly. Sir Rimuru, you have a truly unique maid, she said, her voice laced with genuine fascination. It's rare to see such loyalty and intimacy. Rimuru leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other as he gave Serafina an indulgent look. Too much uniqueness, if you ask me, he said, his tone filled with playful affection. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. Serafina's lips curled into a smug smile as she crossed her arms, her confidence radiating. Of course, master. I aim to stand out. The queen chuckled, clearly entertained by the banter. You certainly do, Lady Serafina. I must admit, it's refreshing to see someone who knows their worth so well. Meanwhile, Yumilia's irritation bubbled beneath the surface. She set her teacup down with slightly more force than necessary, muttering under her breath, intimacy, huh. That's one way to describe it. Princess Ilaria, still beatered, finally managed to find her voice. Sir Rimuru, Lady Serafina, you're like characters from one of my novels, she said timidly, her voice trembling with embarrassment. It's almost too much to watch. Rimuru turned to her with a soft laugh. I didn't realize we were providing live entertainment, he teased, a glint of amusement in his golden eyes. Should I start charging admission? The princess squeaked in response, covering her face entirely this time. Tu didn't mean it like that. She mumbled, her voice muffled behind her hands. Serafina, basking in the attention, glanced at Yumilia and Ilaria with a victorious smirk. Well, master, if you ever need more entertainment, you know who to rely on, she said with a wink, her voice dripping with confidence. Rimuru shook his head, though a small, amused smile played on his lips. Serafina, you're going to make my life a lot more complicated. That's my goal, master, she replied, her tone unapologetically flirtatious. The queen smiled warmly, clasping her hands as she leaned slightly forward. Now that we've eased into things, let's talk about what I truly want to discuss. Rimuru and Yumilia nodded, giving her their undivided attention. What is it that both of you truly need? The queen asked, her gaze shifting between them. Besides the requests you've already made to the king earlier. Yumilia, ever composed, spoke first. My queen, there's nothing more I wish for other than the chance to live in peace, she said sincerely. Princess Ilaria tilted her head, looking at Yumilia curiously. You're not like other nobles, she said softly. They're always after more power and wealth, yet you seem different. Yumilia smiled faintly and nodded at the princess. Thank you, Princess Ilaria. It's true I don't desire power or riches. I have all I need to live comfortably on my own. The queen then turned to Rimuru, her golden eyes glinting with curiosity. And you, Sir Rimuru? What is it that you truly want? Ilaria looked at Rimuru as well, her expression carrying a hint of intrigue and puzzlement, as though she couldn't quite figure him out. Rimuru leaned back slightly, his golden eyes calm but thoughtful. The same for me, my lady, he said with a small smile. Nothing more than what I've already requested from the king. Before anyone could respond, Serafina stepped forward, her voice laced with confidence and pride. Of course, Master doesn't need anything else, she declared. He already has power of his own. And if Master wished for wealth, he could create as much money as he desired without even lifting a finger. The queen giggled at Serafina's boldness. You have an extraordinary servant, Sir Rimuru. Her loyalty and confidence in you are truly remarkable. Ilaria looked between Eumelia and Rimuru, her expression thoughtful. You both seem so similar, she said quietly. Neither of you is driven by the usual ambitions of nobility. It's refreshing. Rimuru gave the princess a kind smile. Thank you for the compliment, Princess Ilaria, he said politely. Eumelia nodded in agreement, her voice soft but earnest. Thank you, Princess. It's kind of you to say that. The atmosphere lightened as the queen observed the group, a glimmer of satisfaction in her eyes. It was clear that she had taken a liking to both Rimuru and Eumelia, and their candid responses had only deepened her interest. The queen leaned forward slightly, her expression calm but with a mischievous glint in her eyes. So, Eumelia, she began, her tone casual but curious. I'd like to ask you something. Eumelia straightened in her seat, meeting the queen's gaze. What might that be, my queen? The queen smiled lightly. If you like, I could arrange for you to marry into the royal family. The crown prince is an option, or perhaps my second son, Prince Edwin. The words had barely left the queen's lips when Eumelia, without even thinking, blurted out, no, thank you. Her voice rang out with such instinctive finality that the room fell completely silent. Rimuru, who had been sipping his tea, froze mid-sip, and even Serafina raised an eyebrow in surprise. Princess Ilaria blinked, clearly stunned. After a moment of tense silence, Ilaria finally spoke. You really rejected that offer, Miss Eumelia? She asked, her tone filled with disbelief. Eumelia's cheeks flushed, realizing how abrupt she had been. She quickly bowed her head slightly. I'm terribly sorry if that came off as rude, she said hurriedly. But I'm not interested in joining the royal family, nor am I interested in marrying someone, regardless of status. The queen, instead of being offended, giggled softly. I see, she said, her tone amused. But what would your family think of that decision? Eumelia sighed, looking slightly annoyed. They would insist I marry whoever they choose. If that happens, well, I don't know what I'd do, she admitted, crossing her arms with a slight pout. The queen leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful look crossing her face. How about this, then? I could delay their insistence for a time. Would that help? Eumelia's eyes lit up with hope. Anything for that, she said immediately, her voice carrying a mix of relief and desperation. The queen chuckled again, clearly entertained. Eager, are we? Very well, I can grant you a 2-year reprieve. Is that enough time for you? Eumelia paused to think for a moment, then nodded firmly. Absolutely, my lady. 2 years would be perfect. Good, the queen said with a satisfied smile. I'll inform the king of this arrangement. Eumelia bowed slightly, her voice filled with gratitude. Thank you so much, my queen. Rimuru, who had been silently observing the exchange, leaned toward Serafina with a sly grin. That was funnier than I expected, he whispered, earning a small smirk from his maid. Serafina, ever the troublemaker, leaned in closer and replied, it's a shame she didn't say yes. A royal wedding would have been quite the spectacle. Eumelia overheard and shot a quick glare at the two of them, her cheeks flushing again. Don't tease me, she huffed, making even Princess Ilaria giggle at her reaction. The queen leaned forward with a teasing smile. Now, Sir Rimuru, let's discuss something about you, she said. I propose my daughter, Ilaria, for marriage to you. Would you accept it? Serafina's expression darkened almost immediately, her golden eyes narrowing. Eumelia froze, her face contorting with shock before a dark shadow loomed over her features. Rimuru scratched the back of his head awkwardly. I don't think that's a good idea, my queen, he said carefully. Princess Ilaria's face fell, her expression dimming slightly. The queen tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. Why is that? Do you think my daughter isn't good enough? Rimuru smiled gently, trying to diffuse the situation. Oh, no, that's not it at all. Princess Ilaria is a beautiful young woman. She's shy, kind, and honestly, Quite adorable, if you ask me. At his words, Ilaria's face turned a deep shade of red, her hands flying up to hide her cheeks. She muttered something under her breath, her voice trembling. But Rimuru trailed off. Ilaria peeked through her fingers. But both Serafina and Yumilia turned their full attention to Rimuru, their gazes intense and focused, waiting for his answer. The queen leaned in slightly, her smile never wavering. What makes you reject her, Sir Rimuru? Rimuru let out a nervous chuckle. Well, let's just say I'm not as gentle with women as you might think. He rubbed the back of his neck, looking slightly embarrassed. The room fell silent. Ilaria's blush deepened as she processed his words, her entire face now resembling a ripe tomato. Serafina and Yumilia, meanwhile, exchanged glances of visible relief. The queen raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. What exactly do you mean by that, Sir Rimuru? She asked, her tone playful. Rimuru sighed. What I mean is, on the outside, I might seem like a kind and considerate person, but the truth is, I can be pretty rough. Let's just say it wouldn't be a pleasant experience for someone who isn't used to that. The queen chuckled, her eyes gleaming with amusement. Oh, I see, she said, her voice laced with mischief. But what if I were to tell you that my daughter might enjoy that kind of roughness? Mother. Ilaria squeaked, covering her face with her hands. She practically radiated steam, her embarrassment evident as she tried to hide her face. Rimuru blinked, momentarily caught off guard. Well, that's a bit. I mean, he trailed off, clearly struggling to find the right words. Before he could continue, he added, but more importantly, there's a bigger issue here. I'm a target for many powerful factions. If anyone learns that Princess Ilaria is connected to me, they could use her against me. Or worse, harm her. Both Serafina and Yumilia nodded vehemently, speaking in unison. That's absolutely correct. The queen chuckled again, clearly unfazed. Unfortunately, I can't do much about that. But let me ask you something else, Sir Rimuru. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. My daughter will be attending the academy soon. I'd like her to stay under your protection. Even if that means she'll have to share your room. The room fell deathly silent. Serafina's jaw dropped, and her entire demeanor turned icy. My queen, she began, her voice carefully controlled but unmistakably firm. I don't believe that's appropriate. Sir Rimuru sharing a room with the princess, it's simply improper. Yumilia, meanwhile, clenched her fists on her lap, her face red with a mix of jealousy and frustration. My queen, with all due respect, she said, her voice tight. Wouldn't that put the princess in an even more compromising position? Ilaria, her face still flushed, glanced up shyly. Too mean, if it's necessary for my safety. Her voice wavered, betraying her embarrassment, but her tone hinted at some underlying excitement. Rimuru, on the other hand, froze completely. His brain seemed to shut down for a moment before he stammered, wait, hold on a second. Sharing a room. That's a bit extreme, don't you think? Surely there's another way to protect her. The queen tilted her head, her amusement growing. Is it that extreme, Sir Rimuru? You already have Serafina sharing your quarters, don't you? That's different. Rimuru protested. Serafina is my maid. The princess is royalty. It's not the same. Inside Rimuru's mind, Seal spoke up, her tone dripping with amusement. Master, you seem awfully flustered. Could it be that you're imagining something inappropriate? Closing square bracket. What? Of course not. Rimuru shot back internally, his mental voice panicked. Why are you always like this, Seal? Because, Master, it's entertaining to watch you squirm. You might as well accept the princess. She's clearly interested. Closing square bracket. Not helping. Rimuru groaned mentally. Meanwhile, Serafina crossed her arms and gave Rimuru a pointed look. Master, surely you understand how improper this arrangement would be. I cannot allow it. Yumilia nodded, her jealousy barely contained. I have to agree with Serafina. It's completely inappropriate, my queen. The queen smiled slyly, watching the chaos unfold. Well, Sir Rimuru, what will you do? The decision is ultimately yours. Ilaria glanced up, her voice soft but hopeful. If it's not too much trouble, I wouldn't mind. Her face burned as she looked away, hands fidgeting nervously. Rimuru sighed heavily, burying his face in his hands. This is going to be a nightmare, isn't it? The silence in the room grew heavy as everyone processed the queen's audacious proposal. Serafina was the first to react, stepping forward with a strained smile that barely masked her frustration. My queen, she began, her voice clipped and controlled, this arrangement is utterly inappropriate. Sir Rimuru Icewell, she faltered, before blurting out, a man. Eumalia's cheeks flushed as she quickly added, exactly. No offense, my queen, but wouldn't it make more sense for the princess to have her own quarters? With adequate security, of course. Her voice carried an edge, betraying her growing unease. Ilaria, already red-faced, glanced between the queen and Rimuru nervously. Too mean. If my safety is truly at stake, then staying close to Sir Rimuru might be the best option, she said softly. Her hesitant tone seemed innocent enough, but her darting eyes and shy smile hinted at something else entirely. Rimuru groaned, leaning back in his chair and running a hand through his hair. Wait a second. Let's not jump to conclusions here. Isn't there another way to ensure Princess Ilaria's safety? What about a private suite nearby? Or extra guards? Literally anything else. The queen tapped her chin thoughtfully, a mischievous glint in her eyes. I suppose there are alternatives. But none would guarantee her safety as well as having her under your direct protection. Besides, she added with a teasing smile, it would be an excellent opportunity for her to get to know you better. Serafina narrowed her eyes, her golden gaze sharp. Master, this arrangement is highly irregular. Surely you can see that. Eumalia folded her arms, muttering, highly irregular doesn't even begin to describe it. Ilaria's blush deepened, and she fidgeted with her dress. Two don't want to impose, of course, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But, if it's necessary, I'll accept it. Her words sounded hesitant, but the slight smile playing on her lips betrayed a subtle excitement. Rimuru sighed, turning inward. Seal, help me out here. Master, even I find this suggestion ridiculous, Ciel's voice rang in his mind, sharper than usual. Keeping the princess this close. It's entirely unnecessary. You could solve this with a simple barrier spell or, better yet, by assigning her to her own room near yours. This is absurd. Closing square bracket. Finally, we agree on something, Rimuru replied internally, feeling a brief wave of relief. Tell me you have a plan to get me out of this. Unfortunately, the queen has you cornered. She's playing you, master, and quite effectively. Honestly, I find her antics tiresome. You are a ruler, not some babysitter for an infatuated princess. Closing square bracket. Not helping. Seal, Rimuru groaned inwardly. The queen broke the silence with a laugh, her tone light but her intent clear. Sir Rimuru, you seem hesitant, but I assure you, this arrangement is for the best. And, she added, leaning forward slightly, her voice dropping to a teasing lilt, if anything were to happen between you and my daughter, I wouldn't mind in the slightest. Eumalia gasped audibly, her face going crimson as she nearly dropped her teacup. My queen. That's. She stammered, unable to find the words to express her shock. Serafina's golden eyes flared with outrage, and she stepped forward protectively. Master would never. This suggestion is completely unacceptable, she declared, her voice filled with frustration. Ilaria, meanwhile, covered her face with her hands, her ears burning red. Mother, please. You shouldn't say things like that. She squeaked, though her voice was tinged with nervous excitement. Her hands couldn't fully hide the pleased smile tugging at her lips. Rimuru slumped forward, his face buried in his hands. Why does this always happen to me? He muttered. Fine. I'll agree, but only because I don't want to offend the queen. But let me make one thing clear, nothing inappropriate is going to happen. Got it? Ilaria peeked out from behind her hands, nodding quickly. Of course, Sir Rimuru. I'll do my best not to inconvenience you, she said softly, though her voice betrayed a hint of excitement. The queen clapped her hands together, looking pleased. Wonderful. I knew you'd see reason, Sir Rimuru. And don't worry, I trust you completely. Eumalia crossed her arms, her pout deepening. This is so unfair, she muttered under her breath. Serafina glared, her voice colder than before. This is a mistake, master. It will only lead to more complications. Rimuru sighed heavily, feeling the pressure of the situation weighing on him. Yeah, thanks for the moral support. Master, I strongly disapprove of this arrangement, Seal interjected, her voice laced with irritation. You're allowing them to manipulate you. And don't think I haven't noticed the princess's little act. She's far too thrilled about this. I find it irritating. Closing square bracket, closing square bracket. Wow, jealousy doesn't suit you, Seal, Rimuru quipped, half-jokingly. I am not jealous, Seal snapped. I simply disapprove of wasting your valuable time on unnecessary distractions. Closing square bracket, closing square bracket. Serafina stepped forward, her tone sharp. Master, this is highly inappropriate. Sharing a room with the princess. This crosses every line. Yumilia nodded, flustered. Rimuru-san deserves privacy. Isn't there another way to ensure her safety? Ilaria, cheeks flushed, looked down shyly. Two don't want to trouble Sir Rimuru, but if it's for my safety, I suppose it's necessary. Despite her words, the faint smile on her lips gave her away. Rimuru groaned, rubbing his temples. Why do I feel like I'm being set up? Because you are. Master, Seal snapped, her irritation clear. That princess is pretending to be hesitant, but it's obvious she's thrilled. Closing square bracket, closing square bracket. What? She's just shy, Rimuru muttered internally. Please. She's acting, and badly. But that's not the point. I'm your first wife, and you promised me that. Closing square bracket, closing square bracket. Rimuru sighed. Yes, Seal, you're my first wife. I agreed to that, and I'm agreeing again now. Happy. Very. Don't let anyone, especially her, forget it. Closing square bracket, closing square bracket. The queen smiled knowingly. So, Sir Rimuru, shall we consider it settled? Rimuru slumped in defeat. Fine. But this is purely for her safety. Nothing else. Ilaria nodded quickly, though her small, pleased smile didn't escape Seal. Shameless, Seal grumbled. But no matter how hard she tries, I'll always be first. Closing square bracket, closing square bracket. Rimuru sighed again, his frustration mounting. This is going to be a nightmare. The queen clapped her hands, drawing everyone's attention. Great. Now that this is settled, there's one more thing I'd like to discuss. Yumilia and Rimuru exchanged glances before asking in unison, and what might that be? The queen's expression turned serious. 2 years from now, a demon lord will awaken. Yumilia and Serafina's faces darkened immediately, understanding the gravity of the situation. Ilaria, still blushing from earlier, barely reacted. Meanwhile, Rimuru leaned back in his chair, still plotting ways to cancel the earlier arrangement. The queen continued. My son, Edwin, is assembling a team to defeat this demon lord. Suddenly, Rimuru burst out laughing, startling everyone in the room. I'm sorry, he said between chuckles. Prince Edwin leading a team to defeat a demon lord. That's never going to happen. Yumilia sighed heavily, her exasperation evident. Unfortunately, I have to agree with Rimuru-san. They're simply not strong enough for such a task. The queen nodded solemnly, which is why I'm asking the two of you to assist them. Help Edwin's team succeed, but let him take the credit as the one who defeats the demon lord. Yumilia frowned, considering the request. So, essentially, you want us to do the heavy lifting and let Prince Edwin take the glory. The queen nodded, her gaze steady. Precisely. Edwin will be the future king of this kingdom, and I want to ensure he has a strong reputation. Rimuru smirked. If I wanted to, I could just kill the demon lord instantly. I don't see why I should do all the hard work just to let Edwin take the credit. The queen's eyes gleamed with determination. Because Edwin must build his reputation as a strong and capable leader. This will ensure the kingdom's stability when he takes the throne. Serafina crossed her arms. Master, the queen essentially wants you to boost the prince's reputation. Rimuru leaned forward with a playful grin. Oh, I see now. Sure, I can do that. No problem. Yumilia let out another sigh. If Rimuru-san agrees to this, then I suppose I'll have to as well. But it still feels off. The queen clapped her hands again, a satisfied smile on her face. Good to hear that. She turned to Ilaria. My dear, go pack your things. You'll head to the prestigious academy with them tomorrow. Ilaria nodded, her face still slightly red, and excused herself from the room. As the door closed behind her, The queen turned back to Rimuru, a teasing glint in her eye. Sir Rimuru, you'll be sharing a room with my daughter, yes. I trust everything will go smoothly. Master, the queen is trying to tease you. Closing square bracket, closing square bracket. Rimuru raised an eyebrow and thought, well, this is fun. You could be right, Seal, he replied internally. Let's see how she handles this. Rimuru leaned forward, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Actually, I've decided that Princess Ilaria will stay in my room with me. But the queen, Eumelia, and Serafina exchanged curious glances, leaning in as one. But they asked in unison, eager to hear what he had to say next. Rimuru relaxed into his chair, his grin widening. But if I had to choose again, I think I would also choose Eumelia, Serafina, and even you, my queen, for that special arrangement. The room went silent for a split second before all three women's faces turned bright red. The tension in the air became almost palpable as each one stammered in embarrassment. Eumelia's voice cracked slightly as she tried to protest, "Rri Murusan. Don't joke about such things." Serafina quickly crossed her arms, her face flushed. She glanced away, clearly flustered, yet trying to maintain her composure. Master, with me, it's all right, but with the queen herself. She trailed off, unable to finish her sentence as the suggestion weighed on her. The queen laughed softly, her own cheeks tinged with pink. Sir Rimuru, you certainly know how to keep things interesting. She gave him an appraising look, clearly enjoying the teasing exchange. Rimuru chuckled, clearly amused by their reactions. Well, I couldn't resist. You're all so fun to tease. Master, don't let this get out of hand, Ciel's voice rang in his mind. We still have bigger problems, remember. Closing square bracket, closing square bracket. Rimuru flashed a sly grin, still basking in the awkwardness he'd stirred up. Yeah, Ciel. I know. But it's not often I get to enjoy myself this much. Demon Lord can wait a bit longer. He turned back to the queen, his playful tone returning. But seriously, I'm sure you all would make an excellent company in my room. The queen raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued, though her face remained flushed. Is that so, Sir Rimuru? She leaned in just slightly, her voice light but teasing. You seem quite sure of yourself. Perhaps you're not just after Ilaria's company after all. Rimuru grinned wider. Oh, I'm definitely not. After all, who could resist such lovely companions? His eyes flicked toward Eumelia and Serafina, who were both turning an even deeper shade of red. Eumelia buried her face in her hands, murmuring something under her breath that was barely audible. Serafina kept her arms crossed tightly, staring resolutely at the floor, though her body language betrayed the embarrassment she felt. The queen, enjoying the playful back and forth, let out a soft chuckle. I'll leave you all to work out the details then. But Sir Rimuru, I must say, you have quite a way with words. Rimuru leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. It's all in good fun, my queen. Nothing too serious. He winked, knowing full well the effect it had on everyone in the room. Serafina finally broke her silence, her voice quieter now but still holding a hint of teasing. Master, you're really enjoying this, aren't you? Rimuru smiled and leaned back further. You have no idea. But honestly, who wouldn't? Master, Ciel sighed in his mind, exasperated. You've gotten them all flustered. It's time to get back on track, don't you think? Closing square bracket, closing square bracket. Rimuru chuckled again, brushing aside Ciel's remark. You're right, Ciel. But I'll admit, this is way more entertaining than the Demon Lord business. We can tackle that when the time comes.